Basic Tools for Promoting Cameroon's Language Vitality in Today's Digital World by Matthew Russell Lee. So who am I? I'm a language technology consultant and a linguist with SIL Cameroon, and I've been serving since 2010. And I serve here with my wife, Teresa. We're Americans. I have a bachelor's in integrated science and technology from James Madison University, and I'm working on finishing a master's in descriptive linguistics from Dallas International University. I'm the current maintainer of the Cameroon keyboard. The current language technology team for SIL Cameroon consists of myself, Matthew Lee, and also Louis-Pascal Ngono. We're going to start off talking about traditional language vitality. If you're familiar with linguistics or sociolinguistics, you may be familiar with EGIDS, the Expanded Graded Intergenerational Disruption Scale. EGIDS is a tool that is used to measure the status of a language in terms of endangerment or development. This is an illustration of the EGIDS scale. At the left, we would see languages like Swahili, English, or French. And at the bottom right, you would see languages like Latin or Babylonian that aren't spoken anymore and don't have a population. The most important indicator of future language vitality is not the number of speakers, but, as you see marked in violet in the middle, whether children are learning and using a language. This chart shows the vitality of the known languages of the world. Each dark dot represents a language. The height of each dot represents the relative number of speakers. Languages to the left are likely more secure, languages in the middle are in transition, and languages towards the right are in extreme danger. You can see that most of the languages of the world are around that 5 to 6 to 7 mark. If we look at Bassa, for example, in the Ethnologue, a resource managed by SIL International, we see that Bassa is listed as having a language status of 5, developing. So the EGIDS level for this language in its primary country is 5, developing. The language is in vigorous use, with literature in a standardized form being used by some, though this may not yet be widespread or sustainable. And you can see that big blue dot that represents Bassa among the world's languages. I've mentioned SIL's Ethnologue, a database of the languages of the world. You may have heard recently that it's no longer available online for free. Actually, though, the Ethnologue is available for free in many countries of the world, such as Cameroon. All you need to do is register for free, click the link in your email, and you will have instant access. Wait a minute. I did say at the beginning that I'm a language technology consultant, didn't I? Well, where's the technology? It's coming, don't worry. EGIDS measures the use of languages in social situations and includes written and spoken usage as appropriate. But once an orthography is developed, accepted, documented, and shared, how does it get from here to here? And to talk about that, I'm going to cover digital language support. So before I get too far, I should probably put in a little disclaimer. While there are many excellent language software tools and resources created by individuals and organizations in Cameroon and around the world, this presentation will mainly focus on SIL tools. So what are some indicators or signs of digital language support? Simons and Thomas tried to answer this question so that they could add an index of digital language support to the Ethnologue, and they began by identifying 6 categories of digital language support. We will be discussing 2 of those indicators: encoding support, for example, keyboards and fonts, and surface level processing, for example, spell checking or auto-completion. So when we talk about encoding support, one of the things that you need to know about is Unicode. The Unicode Consortium is a group of people that are interested in the world's languages, and they have taken each unique character from the world's languages and they assigned it a static number to avoid confusion. So if you see a capital A is 0041, the schwa, the upside down E, is U0259. Now most of the time computers handle these hidden numbers properly without you having to worry about them. But if a new character or variation is actively being used by a community, partners can present this as a request to Unicode for it to be added. This is a list of the letters used in the general alphabet of Cameroon. All of these characters have been added to Unicode already, and in my understanding, the last ones added in 2007 were the capital open O and the capital barred U. You can see down at the bottom number 0168 and 0244. Typically within a few years, SIL and some of the base Microsoft and open source fonts will support most of the characters added to Unicode in the previous year. Unfortunately, you will find various fancy fonts that may not support all the characters in your language. Some of these fancy fonts may be handwriting fonts, artistic fonts, monospace fonts, and script fonts. So what if you want to know which fonts on your computer can display all the characters of a particular language? You can use the Tvoltasoft character identifier, and it will show not only the precise identity of each character you typed, but also a sorted list of fonts that support all the needed characters. The other half of encoding is keyboards. Once you already have the letters, can you actually type them? So there are add-on keyboards like Keyman by SIL, Gboard or Swipe for Android or iOS, and MSKLC, which allows you to create keyboards for Windows. And there are OS or native support. So that would be getting access or having a keyboard inside Windows, inside Mac, inside Android, iOS, or Linux. So where are we with encoding support in Cameroon? Well, all characters have been in Unicode since 2007, and the font makers are starting to catch up. SIL fonts, Doulos, Caras, and Dika, and others have supported those characters and displayed them properly for many years. Microsoft fonts such as Calibri, Arial, and Times New Roman do already contain all of the needed characters since about 2009, but they don't always place the diacritics properly, especially if you are using italics. Google fonts such as Noto or Roboto, they do a great job with Cameroonian characters since 2014. So how about keyboards for Cameroonian languages? Well, SIL's unified Cameroon keyboards are available in Windows, Linux, Android, Mac, and iOS, which means that you should be able to type any language that follows the general alphabet of Cameroonian languages on those systems. There are other tools out there like the African or Pan-African keyboard that support languages beyond Cameroon, but they can be a bit overwhelming. Unified keyboards are typically ideal for those that use and switch between many languages. How about language-specific keyboards? There are some out there, even done in Keyman. And Google's Gboard and Microsoft Swipe for mobile are actually starting to release individual keyboards for some Cameroonian languages that are well documented. And we here at SIL would love to work with communities who would be interested in developing a simplified custom layout for their language. The last indicator is surface level processing. So these are simple linguistic tools that work at the word level. One of those would be spell checking. And if you have a word list available, of many or most of the words that are used in the language, then that can be compiled into a Hunspell spelling dictionary, and then you can use it in LibreOffice or OpenOffice or other tools. One of the other cool things is that now with a similar word list, it is possible to make auto-completion and auto-correction dictionaries for Keyman mobile keyboards. So as you start to type the word, it can suggest at the top, like is shown in the image there, what the word might be. So it seems that digital language support is measurable. All that is required is to think of a tool and then read the documentation or just try it out. In this section, I will introduce you to several foundational technologies. We start out with this site. langtechcameroon.info. This site is the home of language technology at SIL Cameroon, and you can find resources about keyboards, fonts, and language technology tools which might be interesting, and also presentations like this one. The site, langtechcameroon.info, is also the home of the Cameroon keyboard. Here's the site where you can see that it helps you to download and install the Cameroon keyboard on your machine or device. It may be helpful to explain that there are two versions of the Cameroon keyboard for the desktop. This is the Azerty version that follows the French keyboard Azerty. This one is known as Galician because we did not have the opportunity to add new languages, but the Azerty keyboard uses the exclamation point to access most of the special characters. For example, exclamation point O will give you the open O, or exclamation point Shift O will give you the capital open O. Also, we have the QWERTY version that follows the English keyboard of the US and UK. This one is known as Afrikaans for the same reason as before. The QWERTY keyboard uses the semicolon key to access the most special characters. These versions are less than 2 megabytes each and can be found on langtechcameroon.info. You can install the Cameroon keyboard on other operating systems. For Linux, if one installs Ubuntu or Zorin and most flavors of Linux, you can choose the Cameroon keyboard from the settings without having to install other applications on top. Once you choose the Cameroon keyboard, QWERTY or Azerty, it will be available for typing in all of your programs. For Android, you can install the Cameroon keyboard from the Play Store on tablets and telephones that have at least Android version 5, called Marshmallow. Once installed, you can use the keyboard for text messages, SMS, to write emails, to post on Facebook, to chat on WhatsApp, or in just about any other application. You can write and work in your language on your telephone. Just open up the Play Store and search for Cameroon keyboard or Le Clavier Camerounais. When you see the icon with the map and the letters, you've found it. After installing and a short tour, you'll be brought to this page. Like any other keyboard application, the first step is to authorize the Cameroon keyboard. The next step is to choose the Cameroon keyboard. And now I can choose whether I prefer the Azerty or the QWERTY keyboard. And I will test the keyboard to show you how it works. Here we have the Cameroon QWERTY keyboard. Most of the letters you can use just like you would on any other keyboard, so C or O. And any of the keys that have this dot mean that they have a character hidden behind. So if I long press on the U, it gives me the barred U. If I long press on the O, I get the open O. I can also use the Cameroon key to access these special characters. One of the newest features in the Cameroon keyboard is that if you push the globe button, it will take you now to your other keyboards that you have on your phone, for example, Gboard or Microsoft keyboard. And you will be able to use either the globe key or long pressing on the space bar from most other keyboards to be able to return back to the Cameroon keyboard. So the fact that the Cameroon characters were added in 2014 to Android is quite important because any phone released before Android 5, Lollipop, probably uses old fonts that don't support all Cameroonian characters. That means that even if you could type all the characters in Facebook, for example, they might not display at all. And unfortunately, this is why the SIL Cameroon keyboard app for Android requires Android 5. You can use the Cameroon keyboard on Macs, iPhones, and iPads, but until someone offers me a Mac, I can't release a dedicated Cameroonian keyboard app. To do so, you need to install the Keyman. This is an application made by SIL International, and the Cameroon keyboards, both the Azerty and the QWERTY versions, are available inside for use. It's good to know that there are some other keyboards available other than the Cameroon keyboard. If you need a keyboard for the phonetic alphabet, here are some links. So what are some of the best fonts for Cameroonian languages? On the site, langtechcameroon.info, there's a guide for fonts that work well with the Cameroon alphabet, not just SIL fonts. Once characters are added to Unicode, it takes a few years for those who develop fonts or typefaces to catch up. Have you ever tried to type something like this and gotten something like the first one here, or even worse, the second one with the square box? This is because the font that you were using doesn't fully support a Cameroonian language. I should make another disclaimer. Just because a font contains a set of letters and symbols doesn't mean it will always show them correctly. Sometimes they will jam together or be misplaced, as you can see that the tones here are not quite in the right place. The following fonts or typefaces are some that should contain all the characters you need and display them properly, avoiding some of the issues shown here. First, there's Keras SIL. This is a serif font that is similar to Times New Roman, but it has a full set of characters for many languages that use Roman or Latin script. Doulos is often used with the phonetic alphabet because there are signs like the diacritics that are easier to see than with Keras SIL. For those who work in literacy, it can be useful to have the simpler literacy forms of several characters. There are literacy versions of several fonts. In Keras SIL Literacy, we can see that we have the simplified A instead of the double story A, and this is similar to the one that is written by hand. Doulos SIL also has the simple A and the simplified hooked G as we write by hand. For those that are learning to write, we also have Andika. Andika is a simplified font without the hooks of serif fonts, and we see the simple forms that could almost be written with a pen. We also see the same simple characters of the literacy fonts. For those that are working on primers, the font Primary Lines is developed here in Cameroon and gives you the option to display a font that already has the lines showing the extents of each letter. So now looking at BASA digital language support. Under Encoding, they have an entry in the Common Locale Data Repository and an entry in the SIL Locale Data Repository, and they have Keyman and Gboard keyboards, so encoding support is covered. When we look at localized content, we can find indigenous blogs, online dictionaries, health resources, scripture publications, and more. Under surface level language processing, we even find the Gboard spelling dictionary. That means that BASA has a digital score of 5, which rates as ascending on this scale, and you can see the blue dot again represents the language. So now we've established that Cameroonian languages following the general alphabet have basic digital support. All Cameroon characters are already in Unicode. Most base fonts, SIL fonts and non-SIL fonts contain these characters, and many of them will place the diacritics correctly. There are some fancy fonts that will contain most of the Cameroonian characters. Virtual keyboards are available on Windows, Linux, Mac OS, Android, and iOS. And autocorrection is now possible with mobile keyboards and a basic word list. As you know, larger cities tend to benefit first from internet technologies, and about 56% of the population of Cameroon live in these cities. While there's always room for improvement in speed, cost, and reliability, the telephone networks are reaching out further into Cameroon's distant villages. More and more people are finding ways to access the internet through mobile technologies, office and home connections, and at cyber cafes. So, if the basic tools are there, what's next? Digital language vitality. How are languages actually used in the digital world? So how can one measure digital language vitality? The first part is to look for localized content. So looking for blogs, stories, poetry, scripture, dictionaries, news, Wikipedia. Also, we can look for public social media posts, such as on Twitter or Facebook. Once you've found that content, you can also look at the number of users of that content, and also the number of users that are using local interfaces such as Android or web browsers. So does your language have a Wikipedia? The Wikimedia Incubator is where Wikipedias start. Fufulde, although that is all varieties of Fufulde which extend beyond Cameroon, have more than 100 articles. Gomala has 123 pages, Bafia has 17 pages, and Fefe has 4 pages. Here is a list of the languages of Cameroon that have started their own Wikipedia, as well as how many pages they have currently added. As researchers, we can search the language name and we can find some local content, but this content is likely to be spread across many places and even deeper on pages that it requires knowledge of the language to be able to find. There are also smaller social networks, blogs, and sites that are region-specific, and they're everywhere. It's likely that most communications in each language are actually interpersonal. They're direct messages between individuals sharing a language or a language family, and normally that's not going to be accessible by a researcher. When you are communicating digitally with a friend that speaks the same language, are you more likely to communicate using French or English? Are the people in your community encouraged to write, type, publish, and share printed and online works in the language? If you wanted to read a book in your language, where would you go? Is your language represented on sites where other languages are spoken? Are there digital literacy classes and discussion groups? Do you have community websites? How are they promoted? Are there community centers where people can connect to the internet and share in communication? Where else would you like to see your languages? SIL Cameroon and SIL International continue to improve support for using Cameroonian languages in basic technologies on major operating systems. We've maintained tools to make publishing simpler, such as Bloom, but while SIL has the capacity to assist you when you need an advocate or partner to make things possible, the authors, listeners, readers, and users are in your communities. So in review, the reality is that the future digital vitality of your language or languages starts with you. Local members and diaspora members, speakers and listeners, authors and programmers, elders and youths. Traditional language vitality is driven by the adults of a community and how much value they put on passing their language and culture to the next generations. In contrast, digital language vitality may be in the hands of the youths, the Android generation, who have the opportunity and the obligation to preserve the cultural history of their parents and to develop new forms of digital expression. So what part will you play in the digital language vitality of your community?